welcome back to Truck Tech, everyone. This week we're excited because one of the guys who's been around this industry and has really gained a perspective in some of the areas that we often talk about here on the show, in terms of electrification, at least, and other technologies, is Carlton Rose. Carlton spent 43 years at UPS, most recently as the president of maintenance and also engineering. And I just think the opportunity to bring him in today to talk about some of what he saw during that time, especially as he transitions now or has transitioned into a new position as the chairman of the board at Ree Automotive, it gives us a chance to both look back and see kind of how his thinking goes when it comes to some of these technologies and what it is about Ree that was so appealing. So, Carlton, welcome to Truck Tech.
Well, thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see you again.
It is good to see you. We run into each other at conferences. I think one time I actually ran you down at one, and then after that, I think you just said, "Well, I see him coming. I'm gonna talk." Or at least for a minute, anyway. But Carlton, listen. Congratulations on. I guess it was a retirement. 43 years is a long time. So
yes,
I think having that, and we all know, though. I think I'm realizing this myself, is that when you retire, you can't stop. And obviously you didn't. I mean, you picked up something that appealed to you a great deal in Ree Automotive. And I want to come to that in a little bit. But, the thing that always interested me from the first time I ever talked to you was this perspective you had on the companies that will come to UPS and say, we want you to buy our stuff. Here's our thing. Why don't you check it out? Maybe you could tell me how you did some of that evaluation work, and what you were looking for in terms of, getting across the goal line, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So that's a great question, too. So what I did was I always looked at the technology as they presented the technology. I looked at it based on just the technology. I made sure that they had an understanding on what we wanted and, the duty cycle of what it would be. So they would have a clear understanding if their vehicle would work within our fleet. And then I actually took their word for it. And I always told them, well, you have the talking part down. So now let's get to the doing part. So once we received the truck, then we would actually test the technology to make sure that it was what they said it was. Because a lot of people think of, really highly of their technology, but it's until you get it in actual use to see what it'll do. That is the determining factor. They had to have a good warranty program and a good service program. Those were key as well. Just a good support system to be able to help us when we had problems. Because, Alan, with all technology, new technology, you're going to have problems. So it's those who are willing to face their problems, own up to their problems, stand behind them, and do something about it. Those are all keys to us.
So, Carlton, you've covered some of your punch list for what you needed to see. At what point were you comfortable in, placing an order for a product? And then, did some of them come through? I can think of a couple that probably haven't, but how did you regard that crossover point where you would actually place an order?
Well, so the place the order part came from actually after we had certainty that it would work in our fleet, and we had a good comfort level with it, and the manufacturer, we could tell that they were going to stand behind what they did. And then we actually tested some before we purchased, an enormous amount. And then the other question you had was about the ones that we didn't buy, that we were planning on buying. So I certainly would like to address that because I get asked about it all the time. So before I say anything, it's important that I say, Alan, that I'm no longer employed by UPS. I used to be the representative globally for the fleet. And I did have this say so on what we did and what we didn't do. But now I'm telling you from a perspective of 43 years. So I just wanted to say that makes me feel better.
Your disclaimer is important, and I don't want anybody getting mad at you because you talked to me and talked about these things. Now that you've done it, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Because there's a couple that come to mind. Only one that I literally chased you down at Work Truck Show one year to ask you about, and that was Workhorse. Now Workhorse looks like they might be on the mend in a big way under Rick Dowk. Brand new product, not a product that you probably ever evaluated, but there was one that was in your line, and I think the order was like 900. It kept carrying over and carried over. And it was like you were extremely patient with them, I think. Maybe you can pick it up there.
Yes, and first of all, with Rick's leadership, it is a different company than it used to be. I think that's important to say from the Workhorse team. And then the second thing is when we were going through that process with Workhorse, Workhorse had a vision of a vehicle that they could build. The vision just never came to reality. And so that's why the orders kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed, because it's important that, every company fights for CapEx. Every function within a company fights for CapEx. And when the company told me I had so much money, they were going to give me so much money to spend. If I went into agreement with you, then I needed you to come to the table timely, because if we don't spend it in this year, that's the year that it was earmarked for. The company could have used it in other areas. So it's a disservice to everyone. It's a disservice to my company. It's a disservice to my function and my word. Workhorse's truck just didn't materialize in what we thought it was going to be. Now it's also important that I say, when just because I didn't use them, I'm not bad mouthing their technology. Technology is good, but it may not be right for UPS, and that's the way that I looked at it. And then the next one I know you're going to ask me about is
No,
Arrival.
I'm not done with that one yet, because there was
Okay.
something unique about the Workhorse product. It was one of the coolest videos ever, and that was the drone launch off the top of the truck.
Yes.
And I think you even looked into that a little bit, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We actually tested it. Yes, we tested it as well. You got to have a vehicle. The vehicle has to perform first, and then that's the next step. So what we do for efficiency, we try to test a lot of things at the same time, because we want the network to be maximized as much as we can. So as we were testing the truck, truck was coming along. Then we tested the drone. There was an addition of, but the truck didn't come along, so the drone didn't come along, and
Got it.
that's
Got it.
that's the basis of it.
Yeah, no, I understand, but going back through this, and I appreciate it so much, Carlton, because sometimes spending all these years in journalism as I have, there's a tendency on the part of a journalist to write about something and then never write about it again, and you
Mm-hmm.
never find out, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. So I think
Rest of the
it's great
story.
that we get a chance to spend a few minutes doing this, and I appreciate your willingness to do it. Okay, so what was the next one you said? I'll mention it. Arrival.
Arrival. So, I know a lot about Workhorse and a lot about Arrival, but to honor, and I'm going to talk about it, but to honor the NDAs that I'm under, because I'm a professional and I still consider myself under the NDAs, because I do know the particulars because I sit at the table, but it wouldn't be right for me to say. But I can tell you some stuff. So here's what I'll share with you. Arrival had a great product. Um, I believe that they were just trying to do too much. They were going in too many directions. As you know, they had buses. They had robo racing, robo cars. They were just doing a lot of stuff and not focusing on the main thing that I needed. I needed the trucks delivered. And so, as a customer, that's where I'd like to see your resources go into what I'm trying to buy. Because, as you know, we said that we were going to buy 10,000 of those vehicles, and we were going to buy 10,000 of those vehicles. But once again, this is a hard market to get trucks to bring them to market. This is a hard industry right here. So the truck never materialized. So then the order never materialized. But on UPS's part, I will say we were very strategic, meaning that we didn't place money before we got vehicles, and we'll talk about that with the Ree company. Why I was so excited about the direction in which we're going in that.
Yeah, and I know Daniel Barrow has a different approach, because I've talked to him about that in terms of
Mhm.
sort of an asset light approach all the way around. We'll get to
Right.
that in a moment. I want to wrap up this section, if you will, with just your general assessment. You just said it, and maybe you repeat it here, but how difficult it is for a lot of these companies that came to you and that wanted to get in the space were SPACs. They were backed by special purpose acquisition company money. They had a
Mhm.
nice influx of cash initially, and then they found out just how expensive it was to really do the business. Um,
Right.
what is your general take on? We're obviously out of the SPAC bubble. We see new regulations coming now that are going to make them a lot more like IPOs and that sort of thing. What do you see in terms of that innovation, not spirit, but innovation execution, if you will, that we can expect over the next few years?
Well, I believe that the people that are entering the market now have learned from those who came before them. And that's critical that you learn from the ones that who came before you. And you can look at the miscues that they did and learn from that and be able to not to burn through money. Because technology, when you're doing this type of technology, something always comes up. Something always comes up. And at UPS, we were very patient with builders because it's important now. And if I can back up and say this, a lot of this is timing with companies too. So the CEO that I had at that time was pushing me and pushing me. When I say pushing me, he was saying, you get them, I'll buy them. You get them, I will buy them. Now that's a big commitment. So as I told the manufacturers, if you build the trucks and they go through our duty cycle, we will purchase them. But it's a timing thing, meaning that companies have to have an appetite for these vehicles. And I believe that this is why it's a good time for Ree. Companies have the appetite, and we've produced vehicles that work.
Yeah. You mentioned what sounded like, I wouldn't say an open checkbook, but it sounded like you had certainly someone who was eager to advance the technology of your fleet and that sort of thing. And again, it was all about delivering. Give me one or two examples where somebody really did come through and are in your fleet today. I should be able to name them, but I'm not going to.
Well, so you talk about all technologies?
Well,
Or,
I think electrification is the one that we always talked about, but you can
Mhm.
mention something.
Well, so let me talk about another one, and then I want to talk about the CEO very briefly. So the technology that we went very fast with because it was available was CNG. Went very fast with that because we could put that in our fleet, dual source it, run our package cars and our tractors and have one infrastructure for it. So we went very fast with that. Now, when we were very aggressive in wanting to get into the market, and we did some things that, quite frankly, we didn't want to do. We did conversions. Now, we didn't want to do conversions. Converting a fleet from one propulsion system to another one. We don't want to take a gas, make it electric. We want to take a diesel, make it electric. We wanted to buy an all electric vehicle. And quite frankly, the market is starving for someone to produce the vehicles within that class cycle that people can buy. I do know in passenger cars, as you know, it's written that electrification seems to be falling off with passenger cars, but the appetite is big for class 3 through 5. It's big to purchase.
And you still have a number of folks, some of them, hanging on, others perhaps doing better. You mentioned a Workhorse. I mean, they started from the ground up, and it looks like they may have a pretty good product there in their Class 5 vehicle. I haven't been in it, but I don't want to spend too much more time here because I want to get you over to what you're doing now. But I do appreciate this review, and one thought on CNG is that we're now looking at RNG, renewable natural gas. I presume that you were already moving that direction when you were still there.
Yeah, we had, and I can't quote the numbers because it's legal to quote because we print them. I just don't remember what they are, but it was significant. The numbers were significant that we did, and the thing about it was cheap. It was cheaper, because the push for electrification is that manufacturers have to understand that customers must be able to afford them. And I talked to Daniel about that from the beginning of time. It was over 4 years ago when I met Daniel. It was in 2018, I believe it was 2018 or 19. I met him in Israel to look at and I'd like to tell you about how that came about.
Sure.
So
well, yeah,
go
let's
right
switch
ahead.
over. Let's switch over to that because I could take you down the rabbit trail of RNG, but that's not what we're here for. Let's talk a little bit about your exposure to Ree, when it started, how you were going to say how you met Daniel, and what it is that sort of got you to the point where you threw in with them now in a major way.
Right, right. Well, so beginning of the story, he contacted me on LinkedIn. You know, people say LinkedIn's a powerful tool. So he contacted me on LinkedIn, and I was sitting in my office and I was reading, what he had written, and I said it sounds interesting. So I called him, and we were talking about it, and I brought one of my vice presidents in the office, and to have him listen to the call, Scott Philippi, and we were listening to the information that he had, and he said, "Well, I'll come to the United States and show you." And I said, "Well, I'll come to Israel and see it for myself because it's important that I understand your ground up. That's important for me to be able to see it because people can talk about it, but until I can see it, I can validate it." So I flew to Israel. Scott and I and one of my other engineers, we flew to Luke Wake. We flew to Israel to see the technology. It was in a little building, but the technology was very exciting, and I could see the future with it. I really could, but I knew it was going to take time, right? Because that's how technology is. New technology takes time. So, I flew back and I was excited about it. And, we watched it and, we stayed in touch with them as we do with all the manufacturers because, we're hounding them like they're hounding us because we want, as I told you, I had a CEO that was saying, Carlton, David Abney, the CEO, was saying, go faster, go faster, go faster. So I'm trying to satisfy the faster, which is, I would say that's rare for a CEO to say, go faster, because he's spending money, right? But that's what happened. And then I stayed in touch with Daniel and Ree down through the years, would see them at conferences. I followed their technology. I followed up on it so I can understand if they were making progress or not. And then they delivered a truck. I went to their proving grounds and my team and we checked out the truck, and the truck was real because it's a lot of things that are said. But when somebody says something and then they say, well, come see the truck. I want you to see how it operates. And that's what Daniel did. So we flew there, checked out the proving grounds, checked out the truck, and we were satisfied.
This is interesting because Ree, at the heart of the thing, really is a powertrain and chassis operator with some very, very advanced things now that it's got the certification around by wire for really everything. And nobody's done that. That's what you were being told. That's what you started to get to see. And now some vehicles are in testing with customers.
Right.
Let's walk it out. What do you see happening, and what is it that you're bringing to them now as an operator and someone who, I was thinking of this before we got on the call, Carlton, about guys like James Reed, who went out to Kodiak and, brought that, kind of fleet experience to them. Now he's going over to Walmart, but he's staying with Kodiak, and a few others that have, kind of lent their expertise. Roger Nielsen, who, of course, you knew Roger at Daimler.
I know James as well, and Roger.
Yeah, so you knew Roger, and he went over to Proterra. That didn't work out so well, but the point is that this expertise that you have and these other gentlemen have really benefit some of these companies in a big way. And I want to know what you're bringing to them at this point that's really going to, like you say, help them go faster, maybe.
Yes. Well, thank you. It's I call it the eyes of the customer. Because a lot of times companies don't listen to hear. They listen to respond. And it's important, as I've told Daniel, always listen to hear when a customer speaks to you, because a customer says things that if you're not listening, you will miss. So what I think I bring, Alan, I bring the ability to listen to hear. And I keep reminding them of that, in which he's doing a good job. The entire team is. I also bring a perspective from a maintenance perspective. And I'll give you an example. As we're rolling out the vehicles and we're rolling out the maintenance guide and stuff, I met with the lead engineers on everything, and the cycles that they wanted the vehicles looked at, quite honestly, were too frequent. They were too frequent. And what I had to have them understand was that when a company buys a truck, the goal is not to have it in the shop. The goal is for have it out there running. Now, if we say that the truck will do this. We need to make sure that it'll do it. And you shouldn't have to look at it until a reasonable time. So it's not like a passenger vehicle, and you can't look at it like that. Customers pay too much money for these vehicles to have them in the shop all the time.
Right. Right. Well,
So
and
that's
I think your point is well taken, because even if you think about passenger vehicles, you get that for years we were told change your oil at 3,000 miles, which probably wasn't necessary. Should you wait all the
exactly
way until the bell goes off? Maybe not, but somewhere in the
right.
middle there, you've got a little bit more robustness than maybe, somebody might tell you. So especially when you look at something that has like virtually no mechanical parts to it,
Absolutely.
what do you need? What do you need it in the shop for? I mean, you can
Right.
do a pit stop kind of change, is the way he described it to
Yes.
me. I had an opportunity to go out to
Hmm.
the EAVX demonstration a little over a year ago, and it was
Hmm.
terrific. I mean, what they were doing.
Yes. So and on that, Alan, I want to say one thing on that, and thank you for bringing that up. And I'm glad you understand the difference in commercial and passenger. When it's in a fleet, and you don't want it in a fleet to the technician to have to go get the vehicle and then bring it to the shop all the time. So when I explained that to the engineers that are responsible for training, they understood it, and basically they have rewritten the process. So that's another thing that I bring to the table: the voice from the customer.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. We've got about a minute left, Carlton. I'm going to give you the last word here on Ree or whatever you want to use it for. But I'm just, again, thanks so much for being with me. Close us out here.
Well, Alan, first, thank you once again. Thank you for having me. I've always said good is good until better comes along, and Ree is better. And I've said better is before us. And fortunately, the better is now. It is Ree. Listen, I've looked at lots of technology. I have a lot of experience in the field, and I would encourage customers to come check out the vehicle. Um, as the chairman, I have the opportunity to be a part of the direction in which we're going. And so we're running asset light. We're only spending money where we need to spend it. We are very focused. We're very pleased with the ability to change out a recorner, all that great technology. You can change it out very quickly. You don't have to have a bunch of inventory in your parts inventory. So it's a win-win. So anybody out there looking for an electric vehicle, I will be in Indianapolis at the Truck Work Show. Come see me, and come
I
let's
will
talk
come see
about
you
Ree.
and say hello, because I will be there as well. And
Well, I appreciate that.
yeah. Carl, again, thanks so much. Folks, this week we are going to take a look at hydrogen. We often look at hydrogen on the on both Truck Tech on the show, and I think we're going to speak with Parker Meeks here on Thursday. We'll have a little embedded video with him on Friday as we look at some of the things that are going on in hydrogen. And not all of them are positive right now. You've got high prices. You've got the question of infrastructure, which Nikola began to address, and we'll get into that a little bit with sort of a modular station out in Ontario, California. But look for that in Friday's Truck Tech newsletter. In the meantime, thanks again to Carlton for being with us, and we'll see you next time.